Sarah, who is going to crush $272,000 of her debt in under 18 months.
So again, and today is going to be kind of focused on velocity banking, but it also speaks to what we talked about Wednesday, which was some of the mistakes that people make within velocity banking. So I'm curious if as I go through this, can you identify what some of those mistakes were? And this is a fairly successful individual. She's 47 years of age. She's got two businesses, a daycare and a trucking company. And again, she's very, very successful. However, she's gotten herself into a situation where she's got about $272,000 in debt. And as we kind of break down what that debt looks like, she kind of came to me with, not really focused on the goal. It was really more of a, hey, I'm already doing velocity banking, but something's not working right because it doesn't seem like it's having much of an effect. And how can I address this $272,000 in debt? What I learned was, okay, she used to have a business partner, no longer has a business partner. So in the process of removing, well, while with that business partner, one business was floating the other business because she was losing a significant amount of money in daycare. And therefore, the income that was being generated, the revenue being generated from the trucking company was floating majority of the expenses associated with the daycare. So she had to have a come to Jesus with her business partner, ended up getting rid of her, and ultimately taking on the responsibility of both businesses herself. There's a story here worth being told as it relates to some of the mistakes that people run into as it relates to velocity banking. So I think there's an opportunity to kind of break down some of those things. But as far as who the business partner was, why the business partner was let go, like with some of those details, from my perspective, I don't necessarily need it. Once removing the partner was done and kind of better assessing where some of the opportunities were within both businesses, she ended up, again, righting the ship to the point where both businesses are producing positive revenue. But there's still this $272,000 of debt that it just doesn't feel as though progress is being made. And as I mentioned before, she's already doing velocity banking.
Well, it was like she floated one business, then the other business started needing help with equipment and all these other things. So she couldn't even get like her head above water.
I think the conversation we had was the robbing Peter to pay Paul syndrome. It's like I'm making income, I'm making revenue, but it just feels like I'm just moving money side to side, and I'm really not making any headway, specifically on the debt, that $272,000 in debt. And when I started asking questions, okay, you're doing velocity banking, but what does that mean? Like, what's your debt tool? One of her first responses was, well, I'm using a couple of vehicles as a debt tool. So when I hear multiple debt tools, to me, that's a red flag. Not always, but a lot of times when someone says they're using multiple vehicles for velocity banking, my first question is why? Because if you're truly doing velocity banking, there is only one debt tool. And then it was, hey, I'm getting multiple uses out of the same dollar. I've got expenses running through a card. And, so because I'm running expenses through a card, I'm getting the points and the cash back on those expenses on the card, and I'm getting multiple uses out of the same dollar. Like, awesome. But what we learn in kind of peeling some of those layers back is what she's doing is she's paying interest on some items that aren't necessarily required to even have interest on. Meaning, imagine your cell phone bill. Imagine running your cell phone bill through a credit card. Well, if you don't pay that cell phone bill off, meaning if the bill is normally 165, you run it through a credit card and you pay that 165 by credit card, so you get the points for the cell phone bill, that's awesome. But if at the end of the month you don't pay off the 165, you're now incurring interest from that credit card on a bill that traditionally does not have interest associated with it. So even though you're getting multiple uses out of the same dollar, you're also paying interest multiple times on dollars that's unnecessary. So it's so there. My point is, at this point, I'm starting to see opportunities in the process.
The whole thing that she was experiencing was the debt was not dying. The debt was not going away. It was coming back. And it was growing instead of going away. And she was going, how the heck can I make all this money and it's not doing anything?
And I think one of the biggest pieces was, again, revenue coming in, revenue from the daycare, revenue from the trucking company, significant amount of revenue on a monthly basis. This is monthly revenue. So significant. Now, the expenses also match, the revenue. Got great revenue coming in, but the expenses are significant as well. But it brings positive cash flow. So we're talking 5160 in one business and about 9500 in the other. But here's the issue. How are these expenses being paid currently? And again, what I learned was majority of these expenses are being paid by credit card. So imagine I'm paying $35,000 by credit card, which is fine. But if I'm not truly using it as a debt tool, meaning if all of my income isn't going on the credit card that's paying this $35,000 in expenses, again, if I'm not paying it off immediately, then what's happening? I'm accruing interest on these cards. I'm accruing interest in the space where if I don't effectively pay it off efficiently, I could be causing myself other problems. Because I think we can agree that if I'm paying expenses by credit cards, the interest rate on those cards, unless I'm using 0% cards, the interest rate on those cards are not pretty. In identifying the debts, okay, what's making up this $272,000 in debt? Well, we've got this 100,000. We got several lines of credit that the banks have converted to loans. And as you look at these numbers, maybe you're thinking these numbers may not necessarily apply to you, but I've got a lot of clients that if you just remove the zero, meaning if you reduce this divide this number by 10 and reduce the zero, there's a lot of people in the same space. And so she's got a few lines of credit that because she's over leveraged, because she's maxed out on these two lines of credits, the bank has now called them or to converted them into loans. So they're no longer lines of credit. They're no longer open-ended. They are one-time or they're now loans that have to be paid back with a flat interest rate and a flat monthly payment. But she does have a couple of business lines of credit that are still open, still available, and she's got a second position HELOC of about 61,000. Now, in addition, this dollar amount right here, this credit card, most of her expenses are being paid by credit card. And I didn't really dig into that so much because in my mind, because of the cash flow she has, I see nothing but, I'll call it good problems here. There's opportunities here, but we really just have to dig in to better understand what's actually happening with these different vehicles. So again, we've got some significant lines of credit or loans that we need to address, and that's what's making up this $272,000 in debt. And when I asked again, what are you using for a debt tool? She said the words were, I have a few of them. Well, you do. You've got several lines of credit, but which ones are you using for velocity banking? What I learned was it was the credit cards that she was using for a line of credit. And my question was, why not this HELOC? What is it about this second position home equity line of credit that's preventing you from using that as your debt tool? And so that was, again, another one of those items that I identified as maybe there's an opportunity here. And again, peeling back some of the layers, there was a few things that was learned. One was, yes, there are several credit cards being used, and the banks have identified her as being over leveraged. That's why those lines of credits were converted to loans. She got, $272,000 in debt, but almost $15,000 a month in cash flow. At $15,000 a month in cash flow, 15 times 12 is what?
It's a lot. What I want to bring in here is also not that just that she's over leveraged. She's overwhelmed trying to make sense of all this.
And I think what I'm capable of doing is coming in and providing a 10,000-foot view. So it's not that I even have any or some or at all any of the answers. It's really more of because of the 10,000-foot view, it allows me to understand if $15,000 a month is 180 grand a year. I've got $272,000 in debt. If I've got cash flow of 180,000 and debt of 272,000, in a matter of just simple math, in a matter of 2 years, that $272,000 of debt is gone if I'm adequately using or putting my cash flow to work. So what jumped out to me was, one, where is this cash flow going today? Meaning, how is it being split up? Are we truly doing velocity banking and it's all going towards one debt? Or is this cash flow being spread out across these credit cards, spread out across this debt, so that I can at least stay above water and maintain the balances that I have? And then I learned there's, in addition to that, so already included in the expenses that she has, there's this $3,000 a week expense. And so my question was, and this was critical for me, my question was, how is this $3,000 a week expense currently being paid? And here's what I learned, because $3,000 a week is 12 grand a month. 12 grand a month is significant. How today is that 12 grand a month being paid? And it's a consistent expense, no different than that cell phone bill or gas. It's not a one-time loan or one-time expense that just needs to be addressed. It's every week. And what I learned is as the business does better, this expense can increase. So what that means is on average it's about $3,000 a week. So how is it being paid today? Well, it's being paid by credit card, as I thought, because she's getting the points, she's getting the cash back on that $3,000 a week, which is a lot, which is awesome. But if you're not paying off 12 grand a month and you're incurring 26, 27, 28% interest by paying off that $12,000 a month or paying that $12,000 a month by credit card, if you're not addressing it monthly, look at the interest that's being accrued on this basic expense that could easily just be paid for by cash. So that was another one of the items that jumped out to me. So what we learned was the reason the debt is still growing is because, yep, she's spreading out this cash flow amongst all of these different areas and it's not being focused in one direction. So what if we did something a little bit different? So the moral of the story is what kind of jumped out was where are all these extra payments? Meaning if the cash flow is being spread across the debts, what that means is there are a bunch of extra payments going towards debts that maybe shouldn't be. Look at it this way. Let's say she's got a credit card payment of $500 a month. Is she paying $500 a month, or hey, I've got 14 grand in cash flow, so I can pay 1,000 on this credit card. If I've got these other credit cards that I'm addressing, I can pay these extra. I can make extra payments on these cards because what does it do? It's dropping the balance down some. But if I'm incurring expenses like $3,000 a week, my expenses are being incurred so quickly that the interest is outpacing the cash flow. And that is a consistent issue that I've seen with people who, again, I've watched the Denzels, I've watched the Christy Vans, and I understand velocity banking. But instead of following the true course of, hey, I'm going to focus all of my income, all of my intention onto the debt tool, paying extra on these bills tells me that there's just a piece missing on, do I fully understand how velocity banking works? And so once we identified, yep, there are extra payments being made, I wanted to better understand, okay, where are those extra payments going? And for this, I started to just have the conversation around what are some of the mistakes that have been identified in this process. And the list that you're seeing right now is the full list of mistakes that we talked about on Wednesday. So it's knowing the goal, knowing the numbers, impact of extra payments, only focused on the debts, lifestyle adjustments, unnecessary interest paid, not knowing your cash flow in general, and then cash flow being spread across multiple debts, having multiple debt tools, being over leveraged, and the last one being the impact that velocity banking has on your credit profile. So it's kind of understanding all of those holistically. In this specific example, majority of these were addressed with exception, I'd say these two, meaning she's not only focused on the debts. So I don't think that's as much of an issue. And also, she's very open to understanding how her lifestyle is being impacted by velocity banking. So meaning she's okay with having to give up some of those creature comforts to be able to address the debt. That's not the issue. The issue was, I feel like I'm making decent money. I feel like I have decent revenue, but for whatever reason, the debts aren't getting smaller. And so what we identified was, yeah, majority of these items are being addressed. Specifically, unnecessary interest being paid was a big one for me, and the cash flow being spread across multiple debts, and then this one, multiple debt tools. These three were the main ones that I really wanted to focus on. Was, can we kind of hone in on one debt tool, take that one debt tool, focus most of our energy, our income, our revenue on that debt tool, and then use that debt tool to pay off other debts. Again, truly following the velocity banking, I'll call it steps. And so what does that mean? Well, it all starts with once you identify the goal, and in this case, the goal was I've got $272,000 in debt that I need to get rid of. Once I understand the goal, it's okay, what does that mean from a velocity banking perspective? Well, I've got income coming in. And when that income comes in, where does it go? It goes to a debt tool, an identified debt tool, which we're going to use the HELOC, which has it's maxed out. It has a balance of 61,000. It's not fully maxed out. I think the room is like 70 grand, but it has about $61,000 on the second position home equity line of credit. So we're going to take all of the income, and this is just showing the revenue, but we're going to take all, or the cash flow in general. So we're going to take all of the income, dump it onto the debt tool, and do what? We're going to address the debts from both of these spaces. The debts that are impacted by both of these, or the expenses coming from both of these spaces, is about 13,000 and about 35,000, depending on which business. And just so we're clear, these are expenses associated with, matter of fact, this is the total on the expenses that she has. And then in addition, what's going to be left? Well, that cash flow that I'd referenced earlier, that was it 14,000 or so, $14,660 in cash flow, is what lives on the debt tool and continues to drive it down. In addition, it was, well, what's the path forward, and what's the plan? Meaning, in what order should we go? How quickly should we address what? Like, I don't know that there's a wrong answer here either, but this was just the path that I had chosen. It was the first thing I wanted to do was address this line of credit. Why? Because one, I want to get these loans out the way because these are open ended. I think these have a little bit more versatility to them. Yeah, this line of credit has a larger interest rate and the monthly payment is larger. But if I can address these first, I can get the bank off my back. If I can address these first, I can get this, my debt to income ratio will look a little bit different as well. And so what we started out with was taking that cash flow that we have, doing velocity banking, and address this one first. How long would it take for $33,000 to be addressed from a velocity banking perspective if the cash flow is 14 grand? Like, it's just simple math. If I'm using the cash flow to do velocity banking, how much of my cash flow would it take to pay off this $33,000 loan? How much time would it take to address $33,000 in debt? Well, it ends up being somewhere around 2.25 months if we were to use this cash flow to, again, live on the debt tool and use that cash flow to address the debt. So again, following velocity banking, it takes roughly a little bit over 2 months to be able to do that. And when that's done, there's an additional $340 a month in cash flow that's going to be added once this debt is gone. And so how long would it take from that point then, if you add this cash flow to the original cash flow, the additional $340 to the original number, how much would it take to then address the next debt? And the next debt was $50,000. Well, it would take somewhere around 3.3 months, which then would again do what? It allows the cash flow to then be increased by whatever that monthly payment was on that original debt, which was around $543 a month. So these were the two loans. So we can address the two loans in, what is that? A little bit over 5.5 months. So in 5.5 months, she's picked up $783 a month in cash flow on top of the 14,660 that was already there. And so just continuing down that path, going after the $45,000 next takes another about 3 months to do so, picking up another $500 in cash flow. And then that $83,000, it's going to take somewhere around, I think right around, yeah, there it is, a little bit over almost 6 months. So I think I was thinking 6 in my head, but almost 6 months is what it's going to take to end up paying off the $83,000. And then once those debts are paid, we still have the debt tool. Because think about it from a velocity banking perspective. I put all of my income onto the debt tool, it brings the balance down. I pay bills from that debt tool to include whatever chunking I'm going to do on the loans and the lines of credit that I'm paying off, which means that balance on the debt tool, that $61,000, is really living at the top of that limit for the majority of the time that I'm doing this. But it's an evolving number, meaning when I put all of my income on, the balance goes down. But when I pay bills from it, the balance goes back up. So it's a fluctuating number. But for the most part, when I'm done paying off all of these debts, that balance on the debt tool is also going to be somewhere around that $60,000 mark. So how long would it take then just to simply address the balance on the debt tool, which would be another 3.5 months? And I'm not showing any additional cash flow from that because what did we not address? Meaning, in taking care of these debts that we had identified, which is the $272,000 in debt, what did we not touch? We didn't touch any of the credit cards. And that was intentional. Because at this stage, what's going to, if she didn't start out addressing the credit cards, which she could, if she's following this process, at this point, I'm going to then be taking the cash flow created on the debt tool, and I'm going to be using that to pay off the remaining credit cards. But at this point, between here and here, I would have picked up another, what is that? Almost $4,000 in cash flow. So I've gone from $14,000 in cash flow up to about $17,500. Again, in the span of right around 17 months, maybe. Yeah, these numbers seem fairly large, but I'm telling you, if you just divide them all by 10, this is all of us. This is absolutely all. These numbers are not that unusual as it relates to a lot of the people that I talk to, meaning having five, 3, 8, 4, and $6,000 of debt, regardless of the form, whether we're talking lines of credit, loans, student loans, whatever the case may be. This is very, very normal. And trying to identify what the debt tool would be out of a vehicle like this and what to tackle first, because this could have easily just have been done by debt snowball. Take the smallest debt and knock that one out first using the cash flow that you have, which would have been this one. Again, if I'm using debt snowball, I'm going to take that $14,000, $15,000. In 2 months, this is knocked out. I picked up $340 in cash flow and away I go. So this is very, very, I'll call it consistent with what it is I'm seeing. And the other piece is this, making sure that we don't lose sight of those velocity banking mistakes. Like, if you were to look at your own personal situation, do you fully understand the goal? And when you lay out the numbers, is it you understand what's happening in the I'll call it in the immediate, but when you peel back the layers and dig into the details, are you making extra payments on things that maybe isn't serving you? Are you using a credit card as a debt tool, picking up the points and getting the cash back? But do you end up paying more interest than you would have had you just simply paid off the debt initially with the cash flow that you have? So I think it's understanding where in this scenario do you also fit as it relates to the mistakes of velocity banking. In the efforts of just trying to do velocity banking, we lose sight of what velocity banking actually is. And the truth about velocity banking is it's all about the debt tool. It's about this part. It's not about the expenses. It's about the debt tool. If you focus your attention on the debt tool, regardless of what it is you're using, you can actually hit your goal.
Well, I think it's all about the cash flow. I think it's because that's the gas, right?
Right.
So you can have whatever vehicle you want, but if you have nothing to power that vehicle, then you're not going very far or very fast.
And I, in essence, think we're talking about the same thing because it's where does the cash flow live? So
Yeah,
you're right.
live.
It is all about the cash flow. If the cash flow is living in your checking account, does it have the capability of using the same dollar multiple times? No. If the cash flow is living on a credit card, but the balance on that credit card is staying high, or the cash flow is so low that the interest rate on that credit card is actually eating up the cash flow. I think in essence, we are talking about the same thing because it's the cash flow and where it's located. And to me, if you focus your attention on the right debt tool, this will look a lot different.
Sarah, in this example, she thought that just by using the credit card and then paying bills out of the credit card, as long as she was doing that first step, paying everything by credit card,
Right.
that she was doing velocity banking.
Right.
And then over time, because she's now paying everything with the credit card and all the rest of the money is going back on the credit cards, lines of credit, loans, and those types of things, then she was still doing velocity banking. It still qualified as velocity banking. But that half, you had a rule mistake up that we went over last time. It was the doing it like the half-ass strategy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it's halfway velocity banking, meaning I'm doing. I've identified the debt tool. I'm putting my income on the debt tool, but I'm not really understanding how to pay bills from it, or what is the role that the debt tool actually plays that allows velocity banking to allow your debt to be chewed up faster, right?